our country did that to those women in the name of our national security. Thank you very much, Wendy, for sharing with us the testimony of Lijan Eknalang. You know, in my book I write about 120 pages about why we should abolish nuclear weapons, and a lot more people have written a lot more than that, but I think I can sum it up in one sentence. Because I think we must abolish nuclear weapons, because I know that our country can protect our national security without having to do that. I know that it is within the power of the human imagination to envision some other better ideas for maintaining peace on earth. That's really all this is about. So what is the road ahead from here? I think that I would sum up the road ahead and how we can get from here to there with one word: agitation. Agitation. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet depreciate agitation are men who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its many waters. Power concedes nothing without demand. That statement, actually, was not uttered by a nuclear weapons abolitionist. It was another kind of abolitionist, Frederick Douglass, in 1849. I want to march in the footsteps of Frederick Douglass, my friends. This chapter, that is chapter 11, which I call simply How It Might Happen, Transforming Abolition from a Utopian Fantasy into a Concrete Political Goal. And that's my movement chapter. That's where I really try to lay out how civil society movements in human rights and civil rights and labor rights and women's rights and the abolition of slavery, movements have moved history over and over again. And indeed, it has also taken place in our realm, in the nuclear weapons realm. Because you know what? That nuclear testing doesn't take place anymore that Wendy shared with us. You know why? Because Khrushchev and Kennedy on August 5th, actually, the day before the anniversary of Hiroshima, August 5th, 1963, they signed something called the Limited Test Ban Treaty. Wasn't as good as many people wanted, wasn't a comprehensive test ban treaty. We're still working to get a comprehensive test ban treaty, but you know what? It did essentially bring to an end that horrible above-ground testing. And that wasn't just a worry about some future hypothetical danger like I talked about at the beginning. That was actual nuclear harm that was raining down on people like Lijan Eknalang and thousands of others. And it came to an end because we made it come to an end. And we did the same thing about 20 years later, and many of the people in this room are old enough to remember the nuclear freeze movement. The first Reagan administration, there was a huge nuclear buildup, there was nuclear saber rattling. His aides were talking without a trace of irony about waging and winning a protracted nuclear war. And in response, the nuclear freeze movement arose. I got to know a little bit the woman, the genius, who was the chief organizing force behind it. Her name was Randall Carolyn Forsberg. She died just 2 or 3 years ago, and the New York Times said in her obituary that on June 12, 1982, when 1 million people gathered in Central Park, it was the single biggest political demonstration in American political history. And you know what? It made a huge difference. In the second Reagan administration, he did more than the freeze-nicks advocated. They just wanted to stop an arms race. In fact, the second Reagan administration started actually engaging for the first time in negotiations for reducing nuclear arms. That's what the term START means, Strategic Arms Reduction talks. It was the first time that had ever happened. And whereas 4 or 5 years earlier his aides had been talking about waging and winning a protracted nuclear war, Reagan goes to Geneva in 1985, meets with Gorbachev, and he says, quote, "A nuclear war cannot be won and must never be fought." And you know why he said that? Because we made him say it. We made him say it. And you know, can I give one more example? Barack Obama, April 5th, I believe it was, 2009, said a nuclear weapon-free world must be our undeniable goal. That is going to be the centerpiece of all American nuclear policy. Now, I would like to believe, I share the conviction that Barack Obama is a lot more intuitively on our side than, for one example, the previous president, George W. Bush, was. But do you think Barack Obama would have given the Prague speech unless thousands of people had been toiling in the trenches, agitating for the vision of abolition for years before that? Barack Obama said that in Prague because we made Barack Obama say it in Prague. And that is how we're going to bring about all kinds of things to reduce nuclear dangers in the near term, like ratifying the START Treaty, like ratifying the CTB, like more stringent new measures on curtailing nuclear terror, which Barack Obama has been excellent on. But that's why we're also going to move him and world leaders together in conjunction to move toward bringing about the abolition of nuclear weapons, as David Hart said, long before the end of the lifetime of the current president. Because as Victor Hugo, a contemporary of Frederick Douglass, said, no army can withstand the strength of an idea whose time has come. So just two more quick things, and then I will wrap up, and then we can do some Q&A and talk about both my talk and the book and the topic and all the other things that we've put out on the table today. I would like to, if you will indulge me, do a shameless commercial for the book, because Rutgers University Press is very much behind the book, but they have a marketing staff of 2 for 99 authors, so I am doing my darndest to engage in guerrilla book marketing. And there's a couple of things that I'm just kind of shamelessly asking audiences. One, there's things you can do online. You can send out an e-blast to your friends and say, this is a pretty good book, or you say, I heard this guy talk and he was compelling and charismatic and irresistibly handsome and persuaded us completely that the only solution to the threat of nuclear annihilation is the abolition of nuclear weapons. You can send out an e-blast. You can become a fan of the book on Facebook. We have a Facebook page. And actually, a number of people have written little 3 or 4 sentence reader reviews on Amazon. And a number of my author friends tell me that really makes a difference. And this is my first book, and I've toiled at it for 5 years, and I'd be really grateful if you could take a few minutes and share some comments either about the book after you get into it or even just about my talk on Amazon. 2, I hope to be out on the stump this summer and this fall, pretty much speaking about the book and about the vision and about our movement. And I would welcome other invitations to speak before other audiences. 3, I very much hope you will buy the book. And I say that perhaps not too shamelessly, because I said at the outset that that the book has a very specific aspiration, which is to preach beyond the choir, which is to broaden and grow the nuclear abolition movement. But the book will not be successful at that unless the book is successful. And finally, I have one other commercial, and it is not really for the book, but it is for the movement, because this stuff to take place, this stuff to happen, we need new blood. We need blood and toil and tears and sweat and treasure. So I ask you very, very directly, get involved with a group like Physicians for Social Responsibility. Get involved with a group like David Culp's group, the Friends Committee on National Legislation, which really zeroes in on what's going on in this arena on Capitol Hill. The way to translate the kind of broad message that I delivered about how movements make history and how movements really create political action is to really get involved with some kind of specific organization and say, let's collaborate and work together to build ourselves, again, into a mighty political force that politicians will find impossible to ignore. That is how we move history. And so I would like to close, finally, with one more short passage from the book. And I thank you very much for indulging me. This is the end of that chapter that I opened with on the architecture of a nuclear weapon-free world. This chapter can hardly claim to have sketched that architecture in every detail. It has scarcely begun to describe the edifice of abolition. However, perhaps it is not too much to claim that we have demonstrated that it is possible to envision constructing such a cathedral. With the rigorous and detailed work in the months and years to come of a great many stone carvers and a great many glass cutters and a great many broom pushers, ours can become a cathedral that will soar to the heavens. Ours can become a cathedral that will stand for 1,000 years. If we can eliminate forever the possibility of bringing about our own demise by our own hands, at least with nuclear weapons, then ours can become a cathedral that will give everlasting glory to the Spirit of the divine. So why don't we all plan to gather together again, right here, in David Hart's home, a couple of centuries from now. And we will see then what we have wrought. Thank you very much.